Greetings and welcome to Mount Olympus. I am Hercules Invictus, and today I'm with the esteemed scholars from the Edge of Time, Nicholas Dyack and Michelle Brittany, and they are taking us to the underworld, as is apropos in times like these. Greetings and welcome, most scholars.
Greetings, Hercules. How are you?
I'm doing well, and how about you?
I'm doing pretty good myself.
Hercules, it's always bombastic to see you. I hope things are going awesome.
Things are going awesome, and yes, things are bombastic. I hope that things are bombastic with you as well.
So,
Exciting in the land of scholars.
yeah, we got a little bit of catching up to do. Michelle wasn't here last month, so she's got double catching up to do. So, you've got like big. So, ladies first. Lady scholars first. So, what's your big news there?
Well, I've mentioned a couple of times in past episodes that I was part of a book collection called A Vindication of Monsters, Essays on Mary Wollstonecraft and Mary Shelley. And that came out on October 16th.
Awesome.
And so it was available for pre-order, but it is actually now on sale.
Amazon.
And I would say Amazon because this was published, I think, in New Zealand or Australia. So I would say definitely go to Amazon to order it. So that way you can have it in a couple of days instead of a couple of months. But in this book, I wrote about Bernie Wrightson and the illustrations that he did for Frankenstein back in the early 80s. They were originally published by Marvel, I think in 80, 83, somewhere around there. My dates are a little hazy at this time. But I wrote an article or an essay about those particular illustrations, talked about his kind of his influence as well as like why Frankenstein, which actually was very interesting. The fact that he'd been, kind of interested in monsters as a kid. And then when he became introduced to Frankenstein, he had kind of this one perception, kind of the movie version of Frankenstein, and then it was sometime later that he actually read the novel, and it changed his life. And for the rest of his days, he had a very close relationship with the story. Had always wanted to do either a comic book or something to work with the Frankenstein Mary Shelley story. And so in the end, he did 50 illustrations. They're absolutely phenomenal. Puts them, to me, in legendary artist category. So, but I would definitely say anybody that's interested in comics, interested in Bernie Wrightson, or in Mary Shelley or Mary Wollstonecraft, who was Mary Shelley's mother, by the way, definitely pick up the book. I think it's well worth the money.
Are the illustrations in there as well?
Let me do a quick thumb through. It is a more scholarly work. So there are a couple of pictures. I don't have any pictures of Bernie Wrightson's work in the book, but if you do a quick Google search, you can find it. And I did try to make an effort to kind of describe some of his artwork and his art technique, so that you get a little bit of an insight into how he did what he did with pencils and pens and using negative space and things like that. So yeah, not a lot of photos in there though. A lot of words.
That sounds awesome.
Thank you. And Nick, what about you? What's one of your projects?
Let's see. So I have an essay coming out next month. I'd alluded to it prior on a Three Stooges zine, and I submitted an essay on the Three Stooges short Matrophony, which is a Roman parody where the Stooges are back in Roman times, although it doesn't take place in Rome. It's like a fake Rome. But they're potters, and the Caesar wants to marry a lady, and hijinks ensue. Again, I think I mentioned I'm not exactly like a Three Stooges fan or anything, but I like to write about offbeat stuff. And so when I saw the opportunity come up, like, I'll write about Three Stooges and Peplum things, and I actually meant to do Three Stooges meet Hercules, but that will have to be a essay down the road or something. So anyway, I did receive an email back from the editor that the zine comes out next month, and provided all my info for it. So yeah, so a Three Stooges Peplum parody essay, because it's parody, will come out next month.
That is incredibly awesome.
Okay, back to Partner in Crime.
Partner in crime, that's right. So I have a call for chapters out there that went out into the public space back in the beginning of this month. It's for an edited collection on the Mummy, particularly the 1999 Brendan Fraser version. But we are looking for essays that deal with that movie or the franchise, or in a larger scheme of things, the portrayal of archaeology, anthropology in films, the resurgent of interest in Brendan Fraser, representations of Egypt in film, as well as like heroic representation. Obviously there's a little bit of body horror in the Mummy 1999, so some of that. And of course we pick up on, Universal Mummy, Hammer Mummy, and some of the side shoots like, Scorpion King and things like that. So I'm accepting abstracts and short bios up to December 15th. I'm actually a co-editor on this particular collection. My partner in crime for that one is Sean Woodard. He is a friend of ours, but he's also an academic at the University of Texas. He's working on his PhD in English literature with an interest in eco-criticism, as well as the American Western. So it'll be very interesting, and I'm sure it'll be insightful working with another colleague on a collection. So if you're interested, I do have the CFP at my website, michellebritney.com.
Feel free to post it in the Sword and Sandal groups. Maybe somebody be interested there. We have a lot of creativity happening in those. And I'm a big Scorpion King fan. I don't know if you can see it, but I have a...
Yes. Oh, that's fantastic. That's a very nice tattoo.
Yeah, I was inspired by Scorpion King. I have a long history with pre-dynastic Egypt in my childhood. So when I saw the Scorpion King logo, it resonated very profoundly. So I was a fan of the first, when he appeared in Mummy Returns, not so much. I liked the first Scorpion King, then I wasn't that fond of the other ones, but I got the scorpion tattooed on my arm.
No, that's a great tattoo. And yeah, I wish Scorpion King had been a better franchise, but like you, I really like the first one. And I've watched some of the other ones too.
There's like 6 of them, right? Some of them with Lou Ferrigno and whatnot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
And there's Mummy Returns, which started the Scorpion King. And for a while, the Scorpion King, there were books and young adult books, and there was all sorts of stuff, comic books, and he created quite a stir when he first appeared. Video games, there were at least 3 that I could think of offhand.
Mm-hmm.
Also, WWF or WWE, whatever you want to call it, had a big hand in that as well, I think. It's, The Rock was part of wrestling at the time, and I think that was a wrestling produced film at the time.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. Back to you. What do you got? What else you got?
I got a CFP open again. So my Manuel book. Let's see. I got word back from a publisher. They like it. It passed their internal review process, and they want a manuscript now. So I have contacted my writers and said we are agreeing to, bust out a manuscript on Emmanuel, Black Emmanuel, all the other Emmanuel derivatives. And so, but I feel like the book could be a little bigger. I have like probably the bare minimum of essays in it, and so I wouldn't mind additional voices, especially lady voices, because it's a very dude-centric book right now. So I've decided since now I have publisher interest, that probably will make the project a bit more attractive to folks. I'm reopening my call for papers for the Emmanuel book for the next couple months, that folks can submit abstracts to me on a rolling basis, and I'll accept them. I still have like a hard deadline that I'm going to deliver a manuscript to the publisher, but I'm hoping to snag an additional essayist or two with that. But I haven't, edited a book since 2020 when Michelle and I did the horror literature book. So it's been a while. So we're both going to be concurrently editing books, different book projects. She'll be working on an essay for mine. I hope to work on an essay for hers. We'll see. I haven't seen much Scorpion King. I know that's the more sword and sorcery, sword and sandally of all the mummy ones. So we'll see. I'll probably pick like a really esoteric one and think about it. Here's how music bands sample Scorpion King 5. So anyway, that call for papers is open again. I'll be republishing at my website as well. I've got a list of all the topics that are already accounted for that some people are writing about. There's some really cool stuff in there already. And yeah, so that's my CFP that's open.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. I actually saw an Emmanuel movie because you sparked some interest. It's been years since I've seen an Emmanuel movie. So I got one, Emmanuel in Space.
Which one? There's like 6 of them.
Yes, something about lessons in love, I think it was called.
Oh, I think that's the first one. And
Did we watch that?
yeah,
That was the one we watched, right?
so bad.
The
I love them, but they are bad.
the plot is similar to like a million other similar films I've seen, like including Femalien 1 and 2, and they were like basically they're coming to humanity to learn the ways of love in all its form. And here Emmanuel is mentoring somebody from another planet, and everybody else is vicariously experiencing it through 3D goggles or virtual reality or something.
No, I'll actually be talking a lot about that in my introduction, because in the Emmanuel franchise, one of the motifs of it is ladies becoming other ladies, be it through disguise, through plastic surgery, through VR, through magic amulets. They really go out there after the original art house French ooh la la films to magic amulets and VR type stuff. And it's actually funny, the Emmanuel in Space, since there was some people in those films that were actually part of Full Moon. I think that's what spawned Full Moon to do a lot of their sci-fi sexy films of the later 90s, like Femalien and like Petticoat Planet and stuff like that. So I think
Was the one really called Petticoat Planet?
yeah.
Wow.
That's Full Moon for you. Well, they had all their, Puppet Master sets and Transfer sets. And like, what can we do with this money? Not money. What can we do with all this stuff that's cheap that we can make money from? Well, let's shoot for straight to video movie films, and that's what they do. Because there's so yes, there's a lot.
Okay.
It's all research material. That's right. That's right.
Oh, okay. Wink, wink.
Wink, wink. Hey, guess what? There's a couple spy ones, so they might fit in with your essay.
Yeah, they might. I'm actually taking a spy angle to the Emmanuel. So
very cool.
With the Matahari movie. So I think that'll actually be very interesting. Because there's actually quite a few similarities.
Yeah, she did a spy book. Continue that spy
book.
Research.
Yeah, exactly. So other things, I'm working with Simon Bacon. I'm got a couple of essays that will be due to him next year, and then I think in 2025, I'll have to check my calendar to see when those are due. And then of course, I'm waiting to hear back on my Egyptian cat essay that I did. So hopefully I'll have some news soon when that might be coming out, or when to expect it. So back to you.
Last thing I have is, podcast stuff. We just did an interview with a movie director. His name's Jesse Terrell. He did a short film called Sights Unseen, and it's a Lovecraftian film. It's basically the movie Pie meets Dreams of the Witch House. That's a good way to sell it. So we got to talk to him. So that will be dropping at the end of this month. So
Very
we've
cool.
got some other directors queued up to talk to. We got very movie centric recently, and we got to crank out our episode on Mimic 3, and oh boy, we'll be happy to talk wrap up our discussions of the Mimic franchise, but this last movie was a slog. So stay tuned for Mimic 3 also dropping on our podcast.
Yes, yes.
That's it for me.
Oh, we actually do have another podcast news. We often appear on Fan to Fan. So actually Sean and I will be appearing on Fan to Fan to talk about The Mummy and also the call for chapters. And then on a little later in November, we'll be meeting to talk about John Carpenter and two of his films. So we'll be talking about Christine and Prince of Darkness. So we'll get to, well, now you haven't ever seen Christine, and I haven't seen Christine since it came out back in the 80s. So
and I make the mistake of every time I want to say Christine, I say Carrie.
Yeah. So it's been interesting our conversations, but because he'll say Carrie, and I'm like, do you mean Christine? And so anyway, I don't know when those will be dropping, but expect those down the road. And of course, Nick keeps all this stuff on his website because he is such a good boy at keeping up his social media.
Woof.
Yeah. So anyway, that I think is kind of all the news.
Yeah, we are ready. It is October. It is the week before Halloween. We are here to talk about sword and sandal and spooky stuff.
Whoa.
And if you're going to talk about sword and sandal spooky stuff, I think there's this one movie that encapsulates all of that, and that's a certain movie called Hercules in the Haunted World.
One of my favorite movies.
It was a good one. We'll talk about that in a minute. So for folks who have not seen Hercules in a Haunted World, here's a little plot for y'all. Hercules has been on many adventures, but now he wants to return home to the arms of his betrothed, Deianira, who lives in the country of Icalia. There he finds Deianira in a trance, unresponsive to the world. Hercules consults the oracle Medea, who says he must travel to the hand of Hesperides to get a golden apple, and then to Hades to get the Stone of Forgetfulness. So Hercules and his BFF on this adventure, Theseus, set out to get a magic ship to make this journey. The clumsy Telemachus offers to help, but the owner of the ship sets him up to be quartered by horses because Telemachus, despite being very clumsy and very aloof, managed to bed the guy's wife. Luckily, Hercules and Theseus arrive, save Telemachus, and steal the magic ship. Then they sail through a storm where the sky is really weird, and the sea, it kind of parts, not like, in a Moses way, but it parts in a way. But they sail through that, and they arrive in the land of the Hesperides, which is full of women who supposedly eat men. While Hercules is climbing a great tree to get the golden apple, the women send Theseus and Telemachus to an underground chamber to rest, where they're instead attacked by a rock monster, Procrustes. Hercules slings a boulder to shoot down the apple and then goes underground to save the duo by picking up and flinging Procrustes through the wall, which opens to a cavern to Hades. Now, Telemachus stays behind to safeguard the apple, and surprisingly, he does a good job. While Theseus and Hercules travel to the underworld, they come across a lake of fire but it's an illusion. It's actually full of water, so they dive right in. But then they come to a lake of lava. That's not an illusion. And then the center of this lake of lava is an island, and on that island is the Stone of Forgetfulness. So Hercules chops some bleeding roots that contains the souls of the damned, and they make a tightrope to the island. And while crossing over, Theseus falls into the lava. But he doesn't die. Persephone is instead waiting for him, and they fall in love instantly. Hercules procures the stone, and everyone travels back to the magic ship. They are caught in another storm where Persephone tells Theseus to tell Hercules to throw the apple overboard. They do, and the storm calms. However, Pluto, king of the underworld, he is mad. His lady is off with Theseus.
His daughter.
Well, yeah, daughter in this, but mythology, people are weird. So he sends a plague to the kingdom of Icalia. Deianira is brought back too, but at what price? Now, what I've admitted this entire time is scheming behind all of this is Liko, aka Christopher Lee, in a non-Hammer role. He wants to be evil and immortal and rule the land, but in order to do so, he needs the blood of Deianira. So while Hercules is squabbling with Theseus that he needs to give up Persephone, Liko kidnaps Deianira and takes him to his underground lair. Persephone, seeing the madness going on, says she will dump Theseus and make him forget everything. Hercules now sets off after Liko, battling his army of the dead by flinging monoliths and even crushing Liko with one of them. As the sun appears, things return to normal. Hercules has Deianira, the kingdom is saved, and Theseus has forgotten about Persephone and instead hooks up with another lady.
The end.
The end of Hercules and the Haunted World.
They took and mangled many myths to make this movie.
We will definitely. I have a little mythology. Despite loving sword and sandal films, mythology is still not my forte, but I have an entire section on what they pilfered from. That's for sure.
And what they blended and things like that.
So, Michelle, overall general thoughts of Hercules and the Haunted World.
I actually enjoyed the film. I didn't know Christopher Lee was in it because, full disclosure, Nick often will select a film or he'll kind of shortlist it and then we'll decide from there what we're going to watch. And in this one, we were talking about wanting something that was going to be relatable for Halloween.
Season appropriate.
Season appropriate. And he mentioned this one. And I'm like, hey, that works for me. So I was unaware of like who's playing Hercules and things like that. I went in blind on this one. So but I soon found out that Christopher Lee was in there. Boy, I was really excited and I was not disappointed. I wish that he'd had more presence on screen, and I'm sure we'll do some talking about that. But generally, I actually really enjoyed the film. Although there's a mishmash of mythologies and kind of the peplum genre and the horror genre kind of blended, you could definitely tell this was a Bava film,
Yes.
through the colors and the smoke, and it just really, it's a Bava film, it's a peplum film, there's horror, and I really felt that it delivered on those points. Is it perfect? No, and we'll talk about that. But at the end of the day, I'd have to give it a thumbs up, in spite of some of the shortcomings. I enjoyed it. What about you, Nick?
This movie was trippy, man. It was psychedelic and radical, and I loved it. I loved it all. It wasn't scary. For a horror film, it's not scary at all. But as a peplum, though, this is high quality sword and sandal here. I wish other sword and sandal had, as much love put into it as I feel like this movie has. So I dug this movie a lot.
Yeah, that's actually interesting that you mentioned about the budget, because From what I was reading, and I'm sure you can interject a bit more on that, Nick, but for not having a huge budget, the fact that Bava knew how to work with a low budget and using tricks of visuals and those kind of aesthetics, I think that actually really helped set a tone by his use of color. That I think other directors probably, if they'd had, you know, some experience with that going in, I think that they would have done better with their versions. But I think having Baba and having his toolkit in there as a director and understanding visuals, I think really did help to sell. And I think as a result, I think it actually stands the test of time better than some of the other films that you know entertained audiences back in the day, but today would seem kind of like, you know, pretty low budget and shows it. So
I have a piece of trivia for you.
okay.
Young Arnold Schwarzenegger in Austria saw this film and decided to be a bodybuilder and a movie star.
Oh, because of this film?
Yes,
There we go. There's definitely a lot of trivia around this film. I didn't know that. I could see a young Arnie going, that's awesome. And of course, you know, Arnie goes on to do all the speculative fiction films as well.
well, and I do recall that I think in Arnie's you know, documentary or he has said in the past that Reg Park has been a big influence for him. So
Oh.
that makes sense.
They were both Mr. Universe, right?
yes, Reg Park was his mentor. He went and
Okay.
lived with Reg in South Africa for a while, and Reg taught him his training secrets. And then when they had a contest together, Arnold won over his mentor. So the torch was passed. But Reg was highly thought of by very many people who credited him with guiding them into success. So he seemed to be genuine in his desire to pass on all the things that he learned. And he was also pioneer in making a lot of classes and courses for his 5x5 system and other systems.
You know, it's funny you say that. I've got a lot of literature over here that I'll be going through. The big stack of books.
Wow.
This film. I'll be bringing up, but one of the things that Tim Lucas brings up about Reg Park was, you know, mentoring. You're talking about Reg Park was a mentor to Arnold Schwarzenegger, and sounds like he was a mentor to a lot of other folks. It's funny, I think you say that because he observed the opposite of that while working with Bava. So what I mean by that is I have a little quote here. Per Reg Park, Bava was a good director, but he was more preoccupied with the technical stuff than guiding the actors. So he was more of a, not like, you know, this was like one of Reg Park's early films. He was still, you know, inexperienced and, you know, looking for the director for, you know, what can I do? And that's not the role Bava did as a director. He was more preoccupied with, let's do some cool lighting. So this, you know, interesting. You know, I'm a, you know, at my day-to-day job in my career, you know, I do a lot of training and I like to teach things, and, you know, Michelle and I do the academic stuff. So, you know, I when I see other folks that are in that position to train or teach and they don't, I'm like, well, that was kind of a jerk thing to do. So I empathize with Reg Park, I guess. So I want to bring up the peplum aspect of this film, the strongman character. If y'all recall, last month we talked about Iron Master and how I was not impressed with our strongman in that film. He did everything that a strongman would not do. He didn't do anything, actually. You know, he never showed off his strength. He you know, all the cool stuff actually went to the villain. He was a very lackluster strongman Herculean type character. Now watching Hercules in a Haunted World, it is amazing how Reg Park's Hercules like is, you know, coming from the lackluster strongman, how his Hercules is even above and beyond other Hercules characters. And what I mean by that is he does stuff I don't think other Herculeses do. So, for example, he's one of the more resourceful Herculeses, not just physically, but mentally. He has a lot of ideas in this one, like, he creates the sling to, shoot down the golden apple. He creates the other sling to rope across the lake of lava to get the stone. Which as a side note is like that's two sling sequences in one film. That's kind of a reverse David and Goliath, where David takes out Goliath with a sling, and Hercules is a Goliath in some movies, and now he has a sling in this. But anyway, he comes up with a lot of more ingenuity in this film than other Hercules. And that's not like a demerit to other Herculeses out there. I kind of see it as this Hercules film is like the final Hercules film. Like, if you put it like on a Joseph Campbell, what the hero's journey, each Hercules movie is like just one little tiny adventure where Hercules arrives, does his thing, and leaves, moves on to the next adventure. He's not really a changed person. It's overall is he a changed person. So like if you take this Hercules film and put it next to another Hercules film, this one, the depiction of Hercules to me is like one who's, I don't want to say weary, but he's had a lot of adventures. He's ready to settle down with his lady. He has a lot more wisdom because of his adventures. And I think that's what comes out with his more, ingenuity and stuff like that. He has all this years of experiencing and adventuring that now he's like, a wise, sage-like, and still powerful character.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because I think that is something that's kind of missing from other Hercules films, and just in general some of the other Peplum films, is that so much focus is on the strong man, but there's very little that goes through the hero's journey that really gives you that journey from Hercules here to what he becomes Hercules here after his various trials. Because that really is what the hero's journey is that, as we all know, they start out in one way of thinking, they're challenged, and they come out the other side a different person. And so I do think that, Hercules does go in with that wisdom and things, and he does do things that are a bit different from what we normally see. And I would agree, his ingenuity to kind of look at a situation, like, for instance, going back to the apple in the tree, he tries to climb up to the top and he realizes he slips, and he decides, okay, screw that noise, I'm going to do this my way. Because he realizes that he can't get to the apple in a normal way that you would think would be.
The gods are actually actively stopping him and throwing lightning and everything.
Right. And so, he uses his thought process and thinks, hey, what am I good at? Well, I can throw rocks. So he goes back
Yes,
and he's like, all right, I'll just make a sling. I know about David and Goliath, and Goliath is his tree. I need that apple. So, he does, he whips it and swings it up, and you're like, we're watching him like, what is he doing? Oh my God, is he making a sling? He's making a sling. Is he really? Yes, he's going to break the branch and have the branch fall on the ground, and then he's going to pluck the apple. Sure than anything, that's what he does. And so, there are those kind of things in the film that are a nice change, that I actually think, like you say, Nick, work well, and it does give a different approach and storytelling that some of the other, I think, Peplum films do lack.
Now, that's not saying, though, that Hercules still is not doing Hercules things, because at the end of the day, he's still the strong man, and he's doing strongman things. And I happen to have a list of various things that he throws.
Okay.
Because he throws a lot of stuff in this film. He tosses a rock monster. He tosses monoliths at the undead. He tosses a wagon.
Oh, that's right.
At the very beginning, he picks up one-handed a wagon and hunks it.
I was surprised by that.
Oh, so aside from tossing things, he does stop some walls from closing in. He rows a boat by himself, and he stops horses from, quartering someone. So, so we still get the Hercules we know and love, where he, does something, with his body to show that he's super powerful. And I'm sorry, the wagon toss is not the most convincing thing, but it is still awesome to see. And at the very end of the movie, when he basically has like an arsenal of monoliths around him and he's just hucking them, and I even cried, he's going to run now eventually. But
Yeah.
but the power is still on display, along with critical thinking skills too, that still go hand in hand with his physical prowessness to overcome problems.
Yeah, and I keep going back to the Mark Forrest film in which it was against the Mongolians.
Hercules against the Mongols, yeah.
Yeah, and in that one we get very specific trials, and it's like one thing. In this film, it's not just one pillar, it's like 8. And they really, Bava spends some time showing that he's getting the rock out of, think of what am I trying to think? Stonehenge,
Yeah.
all those big monoliths, and trying to get them out of the ground, and then throw them at a bunch of zombies.
You do realize that would be a cool movie to have Stonehenge with Hercules in the center hucking rocks and tourists going, no, stop, what are you doing?
Fight it.
All you filmmakers out there. But yeah, you're thinking, okay, 1, 2, 3, oh my God, 4, 5, 6. And I think he throws about 8 of them, and you're wondering like how many more zombies are going to come, because there, it seems like it's endless.
So about that ending, I was getting strong Evil Dead vibes from the ending of this film. It's hordes of undead coming at Hercules. And basically what's going on at this time is it's not nighttime per se. It kind of is. It's like an eclipse going on. So it's like fake nighttime, but it's still like Evil Dead. You got to survive till morning. You got to survive till daylight. And, Hercules just like Bruce Campbell in Army of Darkness / Evil Dead, he just has to survive to the dawn of all the onslaught of the evil force, the Evil Dead, the Deadites, whatever you want to call them. They're going to keep coming in, until dawn arrives. And that's like the ending of this film. The undead, who's unfortunately, it's probably the bad part of the film, is you can see the strings on the flying undead, but I can forgive that. But it's like, but anyway, they keep coming, and Hercules has to hold them off until daytime. And the other thing is Hercules, he does get damaged in other films. He might get scratches, like there's a little bit of blood. This one, I mean, it's not overtly like Italian super gore, because Bava has done super gore, but Hercules does get effed up at the end. I mean, his arms, because the undead are just scratching at him, he becomes very bloodied towards the end. I mean, it doesn't stop him. He's still Hercules. He's going to throw those rocks. But again, it's very Evil Dead-ish, where Ash begins the movie of, I'm in my blue shirt and I'm looking okay, and at the end is bathed in blood. So I don't know, I don't think this had any influence on Evil Dead at all, but I don't know, I was just getting those Evil Dead, Dead by Dawn vibes from the very end of this film.
I would say that this is probably kind of an influential film to some degree, with the more recent contemporary films. I was even thinking back to, as the zombies were coming out of the ground, I was even thinking of Jason and the Argonauts with the skeleton army that comes up out of the ground. There's just little flashes of genius, I think, that we've then gone on to see in other films. I mean, even Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula, some of the night sky in Hades kind of reminds me of the train going across Transylvania, and you have the eyes that appear in the clouds. There's just, there's pieces in there that you could definitely, I've seen that in other films that are more recent. Whether there's any connection, I don't think we know, but
Francis Ford Coppola and Dracula, I see the connection there between this and this, but in this film, but I would say it's probably by way of Planet of the Vampires. A lot of the Hades scenes feel like Bava's Planet of the Vampires, just stony, atmospheric, colorized, and everything. And I know Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula is like an homage to old style filmmaking and old style vampire films. So I could see, I don't know if he's ever overtly said it, but I could see a Bava influence in that film by at least Bava the filmmaker, you know.
Well, and I think Bava's use of color too.
His shallow colors,
yeah.
full display here.
Yeah, you know, really is reminiscent of, I think, the Hammer films. And I'm in particular, I'm thinking back to The Mummy of 1959 that starred Christopher Lee, and just how vibrant the color was and how bright it was. And in this film, we have a lot of vibrant colors that are used to convey tone and emotion and tenseness.
Well, the Hammer films were very noteworthy because, you know, before the Hammer horror, you had Universal horror, and they were all black and white. And so Hammer horror brought those Universal horror critters, you know, to the big screen again, but in color. And they were very, again, not full-on Italian gory style, but they were very bloody. So this was, you know, early instances of folks going to horror films and seeing lots of blood over, let's be honest, you know, the Hammer ladies with their bosoms and stuff like that. Oh, vampire. Well, what I'm saying by that though is the Hammer films are very colorful, and the blood in them really, you know, stood out in those films because that stuff hadn't really been done before. I mean, showing red blood, very, you know, bloody blood, red blood in film, horror film, and Hammer really brought that out. And I think that type of aspect is on display in this film, because at this point in Italian filmmaking, you still had black and white horror films. Italians were still doing, you know, black and white Gothic films like, you know, Black Sunday, Castle of Blood, all that stuff. And, you know, yeah, there's gore in them, but it's all black and white. And so when you have a film like this come out, when you have red blood, that's like, ooh, you know, that's kind of a pop. And I do gotta say, probably, even though I didn't think this movie was scary, I do want to comment one of the most effed up things was when they're in Hades and there's the roots and the vines and they chop them and blood comes out. And they're like, that's the souls of the dead and it's bleeding roots. And of course, you know, Hercules' idea is to chop some more to make a rope. That is messed up. I love it, but that is messed up.
I think that's part of, you know, as we were saying earlier, some of the originality of this film that I think is, you know, is lost on, you know, some of the critics of the time, not really being experts or as interested in the peplum genre, and just what exactly Bava, I think, brought to this film.
I would say another unique and you just said it and I just all of a sudden forgot, you know, what, you know, unique aspect of this film that's new to the formula.
Oh,
originality, there we go. I don't know why I'm struggling with the word originals. Is the Hercules love story in this film. You know, most Hercules films, you know, when they start off, he doesn't have a love interest. And, you know, a lot of times, you know, women will, you know, like, hey, Hercules, let's hook up. And, you know, sometimes Hercules reciprocates, like, you know, Hercules versus the Mongols. But, you know, most of the time he doesn't, because, you know, he's a wanderer. He's an adventurer. He can't get tied down because he's got to go to the next adventure. So, you know, Hercules usually starts the movie with no love interest and usually ends the movie if no love interest. But this kind of stands out that he starts the movie with, he already has a lady. There's no courtship need. I mean, he's got to rescue her. That's still SOP, you know. You still, the quest in the movie is still synonymous with getting a lady. That still hasn't changed. That's still, you know, action movie 101. But the fact that he already starts out with his betrothed, you know, he doesn't, you know, no other ladies are courting after him. That I think that's Theseus's main
I feel like
function in this film is Hercules can't hook up, well, so how does the audience get there, smooching and loving and all that stuff? It's through the Theseus character.
Yes.
So he plays what you might see a normal Hercules film be, but Hercules, as we said before, this is a different style Hercules. This is a late stage Hercules. So him starting a movie already with a love interest, I think, it's different and unique. It's one of the reasons why I like the movie Ark of the Sun God. Is David Warbeck already has a girlfriend in the beginning of the film. That's not a Peplum film, but it's still one of my all-time favorite Italian films. Because most movies, are I'm a guy and I'm going on an adventure, and in the process of adventuring, I will get the girl at the end, and does not apply here.
That's a good insight. Reg Park in one of his other movies, Hercules and Captive Women or Hercules Conquers Atlantis, he has there too. He's married and he has a son named Hylas, and he's actually going to sit out the adventure and stay home with his wife rather than go and leave. So his son Hylas wants to go on the adventure, and the king, they drug him and drag him onto the boat. So he has no choice but to go on the adventure. But he's at a point in his career where he doesn't want to go on adventures. He doesn't have to. So even though this is a thing that threatens Greece, he's willing to sit it out and stay home with his wife.
Well, I have that one. I have not watched it yet, so that will have to be a future episode. But that one just got a nice Blu-ray release, and that also got an MST3K version as well, I believe.
Hey, have you got a chance to see Mondo Belordo yet?
No, we hadn't. It's been a packed last month, but I found my copy. I showed it to you. Yeah, I've got my Severin copy. It will be watched for the sequence you talked about on it for sure.
Yeah, I sent you a copy of my original review of it as well.
I have it. I didn't read it. I'm sorry. I'm behind in all.
No problem. No rush.
Well,
will eventually be seen.
Oh yeah, no. I like the Mondo films. I haven't seen too many of them. I still haven't seen the original Mondo Cane, and I talked about how influential that movie is on like all Italian cinema. So it's time to man up and actually watch that one too. I think I do want to talk about mythology, but I do want to talk about what other folks have said about this film, because other folks do not agree with us. Believe it or not, folks do not agree with us.
What the heck?
So, some do, some do, but I first want to talk about Barry Atkinson's Heroes Never Die. He did not like this movie. To him, Hercules the Haunted World had no substance. It was too dark and too far from reality. Dude, it's a Peplum movie. You wrote an entire book on Peplum films. These are far from reality.
Well, and they're filled with mythology.
Exactly, and fantasy and stuff. Yeah. So, but he thought the movie was lacking in substance, believe it or not.
I will say in response to that, I do think that in the narrative, I do think that there are gaps. So I could definitely see where somebody might say that there are gaps, but there's definitely substance there.
So on the other hand, Troy Harworth conversely says this movie has surprising depth.
Which we have shown, by the way.
Oh, it's too reflective. There we go. So Troy Hayworth says the movie draws much from the Odyssey, which we'll talk about in a little bit here. It focuses more on Hercules' intelligence and humanity. Mm-hmm. He thinks Bava has a flair for comedy, but just not in this film.
I don't know. Telemachus, I believe kind of fills that role of comic relief. That's Theseus. Mm-hmm. So I think Dora's comedy is just subtle.
I would agree.
Yeah. I've got a Christopher Lee quote to read here in a second. It says the movie has themes of immortality, mortality, and divine intervention. And he thinks that the themes emerge in the film like many Bava films. One of the main themes in this film is deceptiveness. A lot of Bava films talk about how things aren't what they seem, and that's a big theme in this film, like, the lake of fire, that's not really fire, that Christopher Lee's character is really the bad guy, but Hercules never picks up on it until the end. And I do have a Christopher Lee quote I want to read, that this is pretty good. Let me find it here. So you're talking about Reg Park earlier. So here is a story related. Christopher Lee recalls this amusing incident. Quote, Hercules was played by former Mr. Universe Reg Park, a most delightful man. I'm afraid we completely disgraced ourselves by giggling during certain scenes. It was the idea of me, who was very thin and very strong, literally throwing a man like Reg Park aside with a mere flick of my wrist because I'm not of human blood and I have supernatural strength. This enormous man of muscles, the like which you've never seen. It struck us both as so completely ludicrous that we could not stop laughing. It was very naughty of us, and Mario Bava was rapidly losing patience, but he forgave us.
Okay, when was that written?
I don't have to look up the attribution. 29. I have to look up the.
The reason why I ask is because any of us that have watched Lord of the Rings, he does just kind of do a think, and off goes Gandalf. So it's kind of funny that it kind of feels like that comes full circle.
That was quoted in the Films of Christopher Lee from Scarecrow Press in 1983. So
Okay, way before Lord of the Rings.
So and Tim Lucas actually backs up that, and he uses Reg Park's perspective of, yeah, we were giggling on set with each other. So that takes us to the big monster. I wish I was a Hercules character so I could hoof this book. Tim Lucas's All the Colors of the Dark, Mario Bava. Tim Lucas is like the de facto expert on all things Bava. So from some of the things I gathered from Lucas is one, the movie was shot almost entirely in the studio. I mean, not all of it. There's obviously outside scenes. There's those waterfalls that we see in every Peplum film.
Okay, so yeah, we have to laugh because it opens up with the scene outside. Theseus is getting on, making out with one of the local ladies, and we see the shot and we just see a little bit of water, and we're like, is it the waterfall?
It's the waterfall.
It is the waterfall that we've seen in many other films, and we've talked about.
But Reg Park, his prior film, Hercules, Captains of Atlantis, was shot a lot outside on sandy beaches and stuff. But this one is mostly studio, and of course, that's the way Bava likes it because he's able to set up control the lighting and the sets and all that stuff. I guess the movie also recycled a lot of props from other Peplum films. So Bava,
including the Hercules Atlantis.
Yeah, the pillars and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So Lucas calls it the movie has thrift shop origins. He says that the film is a workable compression of Hercules' final two labors. It was the first time Bava worked with a big star, in this case Christopher Lee. And then finally, per Lucas, per Bava, that he considered this a parody Peplum film, but Lucas thinks this undersells it. He thinks the movie is more dark and tragic and has an uneasy mixture with comedy that it doesn't quite work. And then, of course, he has like 10 pages of production notes and music notes, but those are more the commentary things. So those are the three scholars out there's opinions on Hercules and the Haunted World. I think we do need to bring up, though, real quick, the mythology stuff. And again, I'm not an antiquity expert or an expert on Greek mythology or anything. So this is like my cursory look on Wikipedia and also what the folks were saying. But the golden apple is from the 11th labor. This sounds like it's the same Theseus as the one who killed the Minotaur. Wikipedia calls Theseus, quote, a great abductor of women. And in this film, he doesn't really abduct women, but he steals their hearts. He's a big womanizer in this one. Hercules saves Theseus as part of his 12th labor when he goes to the underworld to fight Cerberus. And, Hercules rescues him in this film as well, just under different circumstances. Theseus does have a run-in with Persephone, but different circumstances again. It's actually his best friend, Pirithous, who is the one who wants Persephone to marry her, not Theseus, but Theseus still gets turned to stone and Hercules has got to save him. And but Dionara was actually Hercules' wife, and in mythology, she accidentally killed him. Oops. gave him a bloody poisoned shirt, and Hercules is like, I'm swole. But anyway, so yeah, the scholars say it was a lot to Odyssey, while overtly, the movie borrows from Hercules' 11th and 12th labor and mix mashes them up.
And then the Bava side of things, I would say is the horror genre and the visuals, like we talked before, a lot of use of colors. I mean, Tim Lucas, all of the colors of the dark. I mean, we got it right there. But I also think that, including zombies, which is not always something that was in some of these Hercules films. And then I wanted to call out the mystical oracle as being like one of the stellar ways in which there's a real grace. And I thought it was again kind of an original thought that we do see, I think, in 300, Frank Miller's 300, where you get kind of a narrative from the oracle, and we have that in this film. And as well as a real nice play of colors against her mask, because we never see her face, but she's very graceful in the way that she uses her hands, as she's describing, introduces the story, ends the story, and then has kind of vignette moments within to make sure the audience is on the same page as we're going through the story. I did want to talk a little bit about the villain. Obviously we've talked that it's Christopher Lee. He's King Liko. He's trying to get more power. He wants to have immortality, which I think is a nice juxtaposition from Hercules, who says that he's willing to give up his immortality to save Dionara. And there's also this undercurrent that that Liko is vampiric in some way, which again, we've touched on earlier in our conversation, the horror element, but also that deception. And we never see Liko sucking anybody's blood, but there is a lot of discussion about how powerful and how important blood is to him.
Well, when Dionara's aide is killed, it shows her body on the ground. You do see,
you see blood and you do see her neck, but when we see the aftermath, and when Dionara is on the sacrificial altar, Liko has in his hand kind of this unusual, it looks like a skeleton hand, but only 3 fingers that are kind of made into a dagger. Because he's not there to marry her, he's there to sacrifice her blood, so that way he has his immortality.
And when the sun appears, he immolates.
Yes, he does. He does disintegrate. But I do wish that Bava would have spent a little more time having Lee in the film. I do feel that for Lee being kind of the main villain and the driving force for the journey, we really don't see him a whole lot. His narrative is just kind of there on the outskirts. We don't even see Pluto. But there's lots of influences that are coming in. But I think it just would have been nice to see him a little bit more.
Actually, Barry Atkinson agrees. It's like Lee only shows at the beginning and end. We need more Lee.
Yeah, and his Liko's sidekick, I think, is Karos. And he has a very interesting cut that is very reminiscent of what you would see Greeks have had their facial hair cut. And he's only in there for a brief time. So I think if anything, there's a little gap in the fact that you really need a strong villain. And I think that was a misstep, and a missed opportunity to have had a stronger villain that would have strengthened, I think, the story. and would have given more something, substance and depth.
I agree, and I wish they hadn't dubbed him, like somebody else dubbing
Oh
his
my gosh.
words. They should have let him speak his own words, and he speaks many languages, so he could have heard that.
Yep, yep.
Let me find it.
Nick and I were having a conversation because initially when we started watching the film, I'm like, hey, wait a minute. Why is Lee dubbed? And, you know, I knew everybody, you know, speaks in their own language, but I thought that Lee could speak Italian. So I thought if anything, if he wasn't speaking English, he was speaking Italian, and then he could have dubbed himself back to English. But we did find out that he was dubbed, and Nick has some insight into that in Lucas's book.
So, okay. I know we're at the top of the hour, so we'll conclude with this. So this is from Tim Lucas's All Colors of the Dark. As often happened in his European films, Lee did not dub his performance as Liko with his own stentorian baritone. Quote, I have no idea why my own voice was not used in the film, he says. Of course I played the part English, and there was no need for any change. In those days, direct sound was never used in Italy because of so much extraneous noise. I can only suppose that the production company was unwilling to incur the expense of bringing me from Geneva to Rome, or to pay me for the necessary looping of the original dialogue of my own voice. I suppose they got some local talent. This is not the first time it happened to me, but I think it's very tacky and indeed self-defeating, end quote. In fact, the various Italian dubbing facilities, ELDA, or in this case, IDS, International Dubbing Studios, did their level best to discourage actors from dubbing their own performances. It was standard policy that if an actor was paid for his or her performance in a film, she would not be paid again for the service of dubbing their work. It was considered as part of the performance they gave, as half of their job, but they could take it or leave it. If the actor declined this option out of inconvenience, unavailability, or principle, the film's producer was forced to employ talent from one of the dubbing facilities at additional cost. When you hear an English or American actor dubbing their own performances in an Italian film, it means that he or she generally cared enough about the quality of their performance to have a dubbing clause written into their contracts, or that they were doing a favor for a producer who had run out of post-production funds. In the case of Christopher Lee, immediately after end of filming, he flew back to England to star in the Pirates of Blood River for Hammer and was not available for looping. Lee's performance, like Parks, was also dubbed by Dan Sturkey using a silkier vocal register that he would also use to dub Lee's performance in his next Bava film, La Frusta y el Corpo. And there we go.
There we go.
Boom. So at Halloween time, folks, Hercules in the Haunted World. You know, instead of watching Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, yeah, watch this. You know, again, I don't think it's scary, but I think it's gothic undertones and Halloween colors. Works perfectly as a nice little, you know, Halloween movie for sure. So again, I loved it. I liked it. I dug it. I was hooting, hollering, and going, yeah.
Scared the kitties.
Scared? Did it?
No.
Oh, did I? Yeah.
No, I'm just teasing.
I will add a couple of things. The Procrustes was the rock monster. Procrustes was actually somebody who would chop off your legs or stretch you if you didn't fit onto a bed. And it was Aeneas that was the rock monster that Hercules flung. And also, this was much better than them, but there were two movies, I think both older than this. One of them much older, called Maciste in Hell and Maciste in the Inferno. So it wasn't a new concept to bring the strongman hero into the underworld. I saw those, I have those, but I don't remember very much about them. So I'll have to watch them for Halloween now too. Thank you. That was awesome.
Well, thanks for having us. I'm glad we got to talk about a seasonal, relevant sword and sandal film for the show.
As of mine, I have to add the poster to the promo, and this should be on Facebook and viewable tomorrow.
Cool.
Wonderful.
Thank you so very much, scholars. As always, I enjoyed the conversation. You're both awesome, and I wish you success in all your endeavors, creative and otherwise.
Well, we wish you the very best, Hercules. We hope you have a great spooky season, and we'll see you next month as the autumn season comes.
We'll actually see him next week.
Oh, that's right. We got another short next week. Uh-oh, got to do some planning.
And it's my wife and I 20th wedding anniversary on Halloween. So we're celebrating that.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. And I have a couple of creative things. I'm currently working on a chapter in a book about time travel, true experiences with time travel. And then I have a part of a book in Llewellyn, which is a much bigger publisher than the ones I've attained so far. So that's aiming to come out sometime late next year. So I'm really excited about that. And Llewellyn considers me a Llewellyn author, so I get emails and stuff. So that's really cool.
Very
Oh,
cool.
yeah, congratulations, Hercules. And it's nice that you're able to get your knowledge and experience out there in literature. Very much appreciated for all of us who want to know more. So
And I have you guys to thank in part because you suggested, as well as several other people, that I should write for anthologies. So I did, and like 22 anthologies later. this
Heck
happened.
yeah.
So again, thank you very much, and happy Halloween.
Joyous journey, sir.
And to you as well. I thought I clicked that button.